What's up? This is the Best of Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and this week's Best of episode includes my interview from April 2017 with radio legend Anthony Cumia, whose new book, Permanently Suspended, The Rise and Fall and Rise Again of radio's most notorious shock jock, is now out. And I wanted you guys to hear my interview with him because it was very cool to have him on the show, because I grew up listening to him on 105.9 Free FM in Chicago and then through Sirius XM Radio. So it was an absolute honor to have him on the show. I just bought the book and I can't wait to read it. So without further ado, here is my interview with the one and only Anthony Cumia, only on Hoppe Hour.
Thank you, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing good, dude. Like, it's crazy because I heard you guys when you first came on Free FM in Chicago, and that was like in 06. And wow. It's crazy now that in 2017, I'm in my small apartment in Tampa Bay, and I'm talking to you. It's crazy.
It is strange how stuff turns out, isn't it? All of a sudden you're like, oh, and now it's this. That's cool. I'm glad you listened. I remember that being in Chicago for a while and then going there to do some gigs. It was nuts. We had some crazy appearances there.
Nothing beat when you would go up against Mancow, like when you called into Mancow's show. That was some of the best radio I've ever heard.
Yeah. It was so ridiculous when I made a call once. It was supposed to be a prank, and I ended up just making a good call to his show. What an ass.
That's what I like about you, man, is you keep it real. Throughout your time in radio, you've never said you were sorry, and you've just been very honest. And there's times I've been like, wow, what Anthony just said is completely wrong, but I keep listening because you make very good points.
Yeah, at some point, you got to just, I guess be as honest as you can. I know there are plenty of opinions I have that people find repulsive, but, that's who I am. I mean, there's certain people that go out there and you just know they're BS and everybody, and just doing things or saying things to further their career or something. I'd rather just be honest, man. My life story has always been an open book, so I really don't care about talking about anything as openly as I can. So some people find it repulsive, some people get pissed, whatever, but it's really all I know how to do at this point.
Isn't it crazy how the listeners, let's say on good old Twitter, just get really into our lives? Like, I'm very small when it comes to being a podcast. I'm not as big as you or other podcasts, but isn't it crazy how they just dig into our lives and take every single word into account? Everything, first of all, is taken completely literally also at face value. If you make a joke, people will think you're deadly serious about it. And, and people, there's a lot of people out there that will just constantly try to get you in trouble, which I never understood that either. It's like, oh, you did this, let me report it to the proper authorities. It's like, get a life, relax, whatever. But, people feel like they just want to get in there and find out what makes you tick. I don't know what that's all about, but I've been used to it many years. Well, it seems like you've had to fight against it a lot when it came to the league getting mad at you guys for Sex for Sam, or all the times that the media has tried to throw you guys under the bus. It just seems like people get too uptight over words or radio bits.
Yeah. It's I thought it was bad back then when we got booed for things like Sex for Sam in the church and being taken out of context, saying things. But it's even worse now. Like, now there's just people waiting for you to trip up and say the wrong thing and try their best to have your career taken away. I don't know where that comes from. It's words definitely seem to carry more weight than even actions these days. If you do something bad, people are willing to try to find an excuse for it. If you say something they deem bad, they want you wiped off the face of the earth.
I was watching one of your rants on YouTube. It was the one about famous people making videos trying to be preachy about the election. And, dude, you were spot on. I don't care about the election either way, but I hate seeing the liberal people out there in Los Angeles trying to shove it down our throat,
Oh, yeah, they have this, it really is. For years, there was this plausible deniability on the part of the left where they were just like, no, this is our opinion, and we try not to be partisan, but I'm doing this and that. And this past election, they just said, no, this is what it is. We are so in the Democratic camp, the Hillary's camp, liberal, and to think that somebody that has a career in Hollywood, and a pretty good one, has any relatability to the regular Joe walking around in this country is so ridiculous. That the likes of Barbara Streisand is going to tell somebody how they should determine what they're going to do for a living, or how they should speak in public, and it's so outrageous. I'm glad that a lot of people started seeing that and not giving these celebrities the credence they used to, and that they think they deserve. Ugh.
What I hate, too, is when they'll say something very outspoken about the news or about Trump, and then they say they're sorry 2 days later. It's like you said it because you were being honest. Shut up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the least honest thing you'll ever hear is a sincere apology. It's just, it doesn't happen. Somebody, especially because they get in trouble for saying certain things, and the more passionate you sound about what you're saying, the more trouble you'll be in. So if you really meant something and you get in trouble for it, just saying you're sorry doesn't mean anything. You said it, you meant it, it was obvious, but then they go around on their little talk show apology circuit and TMZ and everything else, and people are supposed to just go, oh, okay. I'd have more respect if you just said, well, that's just how I feel. You ask me. That's another thing I don't understand. A lot of times people in the media will ask somebody something. Hey, how do you feel about this? And they'll give an honest answer because they were asked. They weren't just out on a soapbox yelling this. They were asked, and then the person they gave the answer to will then write about it and try to get them screwed for it. Like, well, you asked me, and I gave you an honest opinion. I'm not allowed to have an honest opinion on controversial topics these days. It's gotten insane.
What I like, too, is you're very outspoken when it comes to the crime in Chicago. I'm from Chicago. You were heard in Chicago. You know how great of a town it is. But it's just kind of sad to see that there's this new perception that it's an awful city when it's one of the best places in this whole continent, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Chicago. It's a great place. It has its areas, much like, and Chicago, actually, it's a relatively small area that gets all that news about shootings and whatnot. The rest of the city is it's amazing. It's a great city. But, you know, it's going to have that reputation until something gets done and, you know, some real law enforcement can get in there and enforce laws that are already in place and make people feel safe.
It's just crazy, man, because it's like people just seem to see what the media says and they just take everything in. It's like having an honest opinion isn't there anymore. What the media says is what people think is true now. It's very sad.
Yeah. Well, that's why, thank God, people are starting to see through that whole thing. The only thing we had was mainstream media for years to tell us the news, you know, hey, what's going on here? And we trusted them, and the only thing they had was that trust. Like, why would you believe anyone that's telling you something unless you trusted them? So they have this built-in trust factor, and over the course of the past couple of years, they have just lost that. I mean, people do not believe what they hear on the news anymore. So there are plenty of other outlets for people to get their information, disseminate it, make their own decisions on and get their own opinions based on what they're reading. I kind of like that better, to tell you the truth. I don't like that there was this all-knowing news that would have to tell everybody what was going on and how you should feel about it. But in this kind of mid-period we're at where things are switching over, there's a lot of turmoil and a lot of dishonesty, and the old school news is feeling that they're losing something, so they're fighting back to get their audience back. But I think the future really is alternative media, where people can listen to real people speaking about the news and make their own opinions. It's quite the exciting time.
Here's what I've wanted to know about any radio host that might be a bit
controversial or a quote-unquote shock jock. How weird is it to see the media reporting about you and being very unfair and leaving parts out? Like whenever you and Opie did your things back in the day and the news would be very against you guys, how weird was it reading all the hatred from the major news networks?
That is a strange occurrence when that happens. Especially, I came out of a blue-collar job. I worked for a living and then got into radio. So to then all of a sudden read about you or see yourself on the news being talked about by these experts and they're just lambasting you, it's one of the oddest things you can ever go through in life. But another thing you realize early on, at that point, years ago, I already was hip to this fake news thing. I don't think there's ever been a story about myself or Opie or the Opie and Anthony show that was ever accurate. We would have to judge it on who got kind of the most things right, because so much disinformation and just poor reporting, speculation, rumor, innuendo would go into a story, and you're sitting there going, look, I'm the guy. I'm the best judge of what just happened here, and you got it completely wrong. And you're at their mercy because, especially at the time, there was no recourse. You couldn't go somewhere else and get that kind of coverage. So you just sat there and took the crap, and you were the guy they were talking about on the news, regardless if they were right, wrong, or indifferent.
So now I grew up listening to you, and I heard you guys get into all those radio wars back in the day. And what I loved is they would pretend that they knew nothing about your show, but then they would rip into everything in your show, so they've obviously heard it. That's what used to crack me up back in the day with all those local shock jocks and all those markets. They would try to begin shit, but they knew everything about you guys.
Yeah, that's another thing from old school radio. There's so many things that people did and still do, which is kind of weird from old school. The rule of thumb that a program director would tell their on-air personality is, if you're big in the market and someone that isn't as big as you mentions you, ignore them. And I never thought that was a good thing. I love the idea of battling it out, having some fun and goofing on people. It's such an easy thing to do. A lot of radio people are just very insecure, and it's easy to kind of get them going. So it was always fun to do that and really battle, and we never kind of played by the program director rules. So if we got in a battle with anybody on the air in those old shock jock battling DJ and stations days, we would just pull out the howitzer. Someone shoots a spitball, just nuke them, and it was always very surprising. People would ask, why are you being so mean? It's like, well, we just end it. We go for the quick victory. And it seemed to work over the years. We did pretty well in those wacky radio battles.
Which one is the one that comes to your mind the most? Is it the one with Mancow or some of the other local morning shows? Which radio battle do you think about, the one that got the most intense?
I guess the one with, of course, the Howard thing was huge because it was Howard, and he's like the biggest fish in the sea there. So having those, but unfortunately, a lot of those culminated off the air with management and bosses yelling that we couldn't talk about him, and him making gag rules and whatnot. So we had a little fun with that, but I guess, yeah, the Mancow thing was pretty big. And then there was that one guy, what the hell was his name? I think it's Billy. There's been so many names. But I think Mancow, though. Yeah, we did a lot of goofing back and forth with him.
You know what's weird about these morning shows that are just on in their markets is that they think they're like the top of the game and they're like famous just in that city. But once they leave that town, nobody knows who they are. It's the most bizarre ego being a local famous person,
One market wonders. Yeah, they're the kings in their little small town. They could probably go to any local bar and never buy a drink. That's got to get you when you leave your town and realize no one knows who the hell you are. You've made zero impact. Some people are happy with that, which
that's fine, but you should not walk around with any kind of ego saying that you've conquered the broadcasting world if you're a one-market wonder, you know?
Is it weird to think about the impact you and Opie had in radio, especially with comedy, all the comedians that came through your show over the years? Is it ever weird to think about?
Yeah, again, I've always been I'll look at 20 other reasons why something happened, aside from my own actions. So I really don't do a lot of back-tapping, as it were. But the truth of the matter is, when it comes to comics and radio, I mean, comedians have been going on radio forever, but they'd go on, they'd do a little of their act, the DJ would plug their gig, and that was it. Like, the O&A show was one of the first shows to just have comics come on as people. And, forget about your act. Throw that out the door. We're going to talk about this or that or whatever the subject would be, or we're going to goof on each other. Like, that whole thing, and I know Jim Norton was such an important part of bringing that to our show. And it became a huge thing where some of the biggest comics out there came through our show as just, your local comic and are doing very well even today. So, yeah, I feel pretty good about that. I feel good that we were part of that.
Now, I'm doing this show from my house. I do pretty well. I have listeners from when I worked on Rover Show. I have listeners here. What I want to ask you isn't just for me, but it's for anybody that's trying to build something at home where you can make money. What is the key to gaining traction when it comes to having a show from your house?
My favorite, I've said this so many times, and it's my favoriteest thing I've ever heard on this topic, and it was said by Adam Carolla. He said, the first thing you have to do, be famous. Because it's like, if you have some notoriety, it's a lot easier to get an audience together pretty quick. Aside from that, I think anybody that wants to do a podcast, especially today when everyone has a podcast, you have to stand out. You have to be fearless. There will be people that will just lambast you for something you're saying. And I don't even mean be phony and get on and say things outrageous on purpose, but pick something you're passionate about, and then and it's got to be interesting to people, but then talk about it how passionately you are about it. If you start covering up a little or backing off instead of going to the limit with what you want to say, it's going to come off as half-assed, and you're going to be apologetic and things. You got to go 100%. That's what it is. Don't worry about what anyone thinks or says or calls you. You just got to go balls out.
How awesome and how freeing is it doing the show from your house? I mean, there's just something that's real fun about the idea that you can just go to your basement, or for me, go to my living room and just record a show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I did that, the house thing, the basement thing, for a year. And then the past 2.5 or a year and a half, I got a studio in the city. So I'm doing it from Midtown Manhattan now. It's great. It's been obviously more people are available in New York City. It's a lot harder to get Jimmy or Bobby or DePaulo to hump out to Roslyn, Long Island than it is to get them to come into Midtown, which they're in there probably every day anyway. So it just made it easier for that. It's dedicated 100% to the shows, and with more shows joining the network, it would be a little odd to have people traipsing in and out of my house every day at various times of the day. So getting a studio finally was the best answer. But for that year, man, that was my lifeboat. I needed a place to broadcast from. I had the studio set up from doing my Live from the Compound show, even when I was with Sirius XM, and I did it just because I liked it. I completely enjoyed the medium of having a visual program that I could play clips on and talk about. If something popped up in the news at 9 p.m., I could run downstairs and throw it on and start talking about it. So just the chance that I had that down there helped me hugely when I got the boot. For the year after, it was great.
I had people coming by, guests and whatnot, but it worked out where the studio was pretty key. Also, I needed some kind of structure. I will sit on my couch, watch TV, and play video games unless booted out of my house to go somewhere on a daily basis. And to have to go to the city and do a show is something, it kind of works out, that it gives me a bit of a ritual every day.
You worked with Opie for 19 years. How was it going from having a co-host for 19 years to having to build your own show on your own? Was it kind of an adventure, or were you a bit anxious about it?
Definitely both. Definitely both. It was, like I said, I had been doing the Live from the Compound shows on and off, even when I was on XM with Opie. So I knew what I wanted to do as a kind of single guy hosting a show. It wasn't that scary of a thing. But now that it was my job, it definitely got me a little anxious. Like, can I pull this off? As a goof downstairs in my basement, it's fine. But for this now being the next part of my career, yeah, I was a little apprehensive if I would be able to pull it off. But I've always been able to just, get on and talk about whatever topic comes up. That's like, I guess, part of whatever talent I have. I could yap about anything. So that was kind of nice. And then I have the right people in place that help out with the shows. And then the new shows coming on board open up possibilities to have people come on every so often. Pat Dixon and Gavin McGinnis are so good to have come on and do crossovers with me on the show. So I definitely like carrying the show myself sometimes, doing the 2 hours solo. But having a sort of a guest host or even just a guest for the day is cool too. So yeah, it was a little apprehensive at first, but I'm so used to it now. I don't even give it a second thought when the camera goes on and it's time to do the show that, I'm like, oh, I got to talk. It's second nature.
Now, you do a show for 2 hours every day. How do you find prep to fill the time? Because I do my show maybe once or twice a week, and I have a hard time when it's a slow news day finding things to talk about. So how do you find prep for your show?
I'm a kind of guy, and I've been like this my whole life. I will turn on the television and get pissed off at a commercial, and that'll become a break. Like, anything I look at can probably become a break if I think about it enough. But some things just pop and go. I go, God, I want to talk about that. And I feel inside me, I'm like, ugh, that annoys me. And I know if I'm that passionate about it, even in a goofy way that a commercial's annoying me, like really, who cares? But if it's working up a phlegm in my throat, then I know I could unload on it on the air and people find it entertaining, or I hope they will. Other things, like when I'm leaving the show Thursday, which is the last show of the week that we do, I'm on the train, I'm cutting and pasting links from news stories for Monday already. Like, I'm looking, the second I get off doing my show, I'm looking for at least the next day's show, if not Monday's show, if it's a weekend. So, I'm never not looking for material. And, that's the most important thing, to just keep your eyes and ears open for anything. Put down stories you might not even know that you're going to talk about, or if there's something that's kind of interesting, and if you put your own twist on it, it becomes very relatable to the audience, or they'll understand why you're talking about it because you're doing it in your own way. Like, sometimes prep doesn't just smack you in the face and go, hey, this is a great subject. Some of those things are great. Anytime a teacher has sex with a student, it's a story.
Yes.
I love it. It's going on the show that day. It's easy. But there are other stories that you look at and kind of go, is it? But then you kind of think about it, put your own twist on it, and it becomes good too. So sometimes you got to look a little deeper than just, is this a funny, wacky story? And think how you can put your own personality onto it and make it a break for the show.
Why do you think these teachers aren't learning their lesson and they keep having sex with the kids and the teenagers? It's weird, dude. I've talked about this on my show. I think it's porn making it such a prevalent thing when you go on the homepage of Pornhub and you see teacher-kid sex that I think it's just become very taboo in 2017. It's very bizarre to watch.
It's a strange... I was trying to explain this the other day also with Keith and a couple of other guys about why this seems so prevalent now. I think it's an age thing. I don't remember, especially when I was growing up back in the 1800s, when teachers, they were old. They were older ladies. I don't know what it is now that younger girls are getting to be teachers, girls in their 20s. So that's one thing. The other thing, we never spoke to a teacher unless it was in class. These guys, now they have, like, the teacher's phone number. They text them shit and email, like, hey, was this assignment? We never had communication with a teacher outside of that classroom. It just didn't happen. So it gives the opportunity to maybe slip a funny line in or, develop your personality a little more. Maybe the teacher is telling how unhappy she is in certain circumstances. I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you, a lot of guys are screwing their teachers. And it's not exactly girls that look to be hard up either. There's some attractive ladies getting pounded by their students.
Isn't it weird? I'm not saying that it's as bad when a guy bangs a girl, but it just seems like we sort of praise these female teachers and we go, oh, good for the guy. But whenever a guy bangs a teenage girl, we go, ew, what the fuck? Do you know what I mean?
Put him away forever. Yeah, there's a criteria there. There's if the teacher, the girl teacher is really attractive, John will pop the picture up on my monitor, and I'll go, yep, not guilty. She's going to walk. It just doesn't matter. If she's a real disaster, then, you'll give her a couple of years maybe in the joint. And if it's a guy in his 30s and he's been with a student, then it's like lock him up, throw away the key, sterilize him, all that. So, double standard. There's double standards all over the world. I defy you to read any story in 2017 and not be able to come up with a double standard for it.
Now, what I want to ask you too is, kids my age, we have it easy. We can get laid just by going on a mobile app. While you, back in the day, you had to work for it and actually talk to girls in person. Is there a part of you now that wishes you had that back in the day so you could have got laid more?
Yeah, I think any guy would think, any guy that grew up in the 70s or 80s would think, my God, wouldn't an app have been nice, a dating app or something, or even just social media to just kind of scope out your prospects before you actually had to even come up with a conversation. Back in my old days, oh my God, I'm talking initially, cold, out of nowhere. You're face-to-face now. Now you have to juggle, do something, show your plumage, bird, make this girl want you. And it was not an easy thing. And rejection was its coldest because it was right there in front of the person, and usually in front of your dumb friends who would see you crash and burn miserably and make fun of you. So while there's a kind of a fun nostalgia about the whole thing, hell yeah, every guy would have liked it a little easier, like it is now. Who wants to go through that aggravation?
Now, I work at 1025 The Bone. It's like FM talk radio, and one of the shows on there is Roger and JP, and I've been on their show a few times, and JP wanted to make sure that I said what's up to you.
Oh, my God, I love JP, man. I've known that guy forever. Back in the BAB days, and because him and Opie were friends and co-workers, and to me, when I was still working for a living in construction, JP was the epitome of radio voice. Like, that was the voice, man. Just deep, smooth voice, great delivery, articulate, and to me, that was what you had to be. And then I realized you could just be a jack-off like me, so it worked. I guess it all worked out.
Now, for people that haven't heard your show, why should they sign up for the Anthony Cumia Show and the Compound Media Network?
Oh,
Oh, well, you know what? It's a whole different animal. It's a new type of medium. You're going to hear genuine, open, and honest talk. You talk about the First Amendment. There's no strings attached here. No one could tell anybody that they can or can't say what they want on this network, and it's something that really is taken for granted these days. We got personalities on there like Gavin and Pat and Gino and Aaron, the crazy Eastside Dave McDonald, Talib Stark, like a bunch of different political ideology, but also a lot of comedy, and again, that complete lack of fear. So if something comes to your head, before you have to run it through a mouth filter, it could just pop out, you know? And I think you get a much more honest, show that way when you're not worried, when that mouth filter is in place with thinking about a GM and a PD and the advertisers and all that. So it's just a much more honest, real type of broadcast you're going to get.
How awesome is it not having to deal with any bosses?
You know, I've been very good over the years with dealing with bosses. Opie was usually the bad one that had a problem dealing. We would go in there and good cop, bad cop to guys constantly. But I would get along with management pretty well just because I would shine them on and be like, hey, as long as things are status quo and I'm getting my check and I'm able to do the show, everything's cool. But I never realized until I didn't have a true boss how obtrusive they were or intrusive they were in the show. I mean, you're constantly checking yourself to not get them mad or get yourself in trouble. And it is detrimental, man. You don't realize how much stuff you didn't say or won't say that would have been funny or informative or interesting because you're worried about that management cloud that's over your head. It's been a whole new experience. I couldn't be happier.
There are fans, Anthony, that would love to know this. Is there any chance in the future that you would work with Opie?
Oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, I meant Roger, not JP.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. When I heard you say deep voice.
JP. It was Roger. Yeah, it was Roger. But JP, come on. I like you too. No, Roger Luce. Oh, poor JP. He's like, oh, damn it. No, Roger Luce is the friggin' radio guy. Oh, my God, that's hilarious. What was the question, sir?
Would you ever work with Opie again? Because a lot of fans ask all the time, I'm assuming, if you would ever work with him.
Oh, yeah, in some capacity. I mean, like I tell people all the time, look, the O&A show thing was what it was, and it was great, and it's done. I mean, it ran its course. You could look back fondly. It's one thing, but we could definitely do something in some capacity. I'm certain of that. But to tell you the truth, we couldn't do the O&A show again. So, yeah, but I would definitely consider if the project was right, something like that. Definitely, I'd work with him again.
What was it like when you called Opie's show, or you guys were on the phone for the first time about 6 months ago? How weird was it where that magic was just back like that?
You know, it's strange. It was weird for like a second, because it was like, oh, shit, here's, this is Opie on the line, we haven't talked and that. But the second we started talking about stuff, it just naturally fell right into place. I mean, there's no denying that when we start yapping about whatever the hell we're going to be talking about, something happens, It's something very natural, and people over the years have seemed to enjoy it. So, that's still there, but well, like I said, we couldn't recreate the O&A show, but there's definitely opportunity for us to work together in some capacity and put out something that I think would be really, really good. So, that's open.
Now, for people that would want to hear your show, where can they find your work?
That is at compoundmedia.com. Compound Media. Yeah, I'm on from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, and that's Monday through Thursday. But then we got, like I said, we got a lot of new shows on there that are really doing well and are very, very interesting and completely 100% uncensored. So it's been a lot of fun to do, and people enjoy it. So I'm really psyched about it.
Well, Anthony, keep up the good work, man. You're one of the reasons why I'm in radio. I've listened to you for about 11 years now, so it's been a lot of fun having you on Hoppe Hour.
That's so cool, man, Ryan. Thanks a lot. Like I said, I follow you on Twitter. You get some funny and interesting tweets going on, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on. Very cool.
Thank you, Anthony. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, man. Take it easy.
All right, bye. I can't even believe that just really happened, because what I am doing right now is I'm sitting on my couch in my apartment in South St. Pete in kind of a sketchy part of town, and I just had the influence that caused me to go into this crazy business on my show. This is very surreal. I've had about 150 guests, and I'm not even bragging. I'm just saying how many I've had. I've had 150, and that was probably the one where that didn't even seem like real life. Like, that's going to be an interview that I'm going to have to take in for a few minutes. That was very surreal. Now, if you're a fan of Anthony Cumia or the Opie and Anthony show, and you want to hear my show and you're drawn in by the potential, get the Hoppe Radio app in the Google Play and iPhone shop. I have my own mobile app like Anthony, like XM Radio, like Sirius XM, so you can listen to me anywhere. I do the shows live, and it's weird because I do the shows on occasion. It depends on my work schedule because I work in promotions at 102.5 The Bone. But get the Hoppe Radio app, and you can listen anytime, anywhere, and I post when I'm going to be live on the Twitter app at Ryan Hoppe Radio, RyanHoppeRadio.com. All right, this has been Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, saying peace out.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour.